So the notion that privation is a pathway to criminality, that's not a well-founded formulation. And there are an infinite number of counterexamples, and they're crucial. And some of the best people I know, and I mean that literally, are people who had childhood so absolutely abysmal that virtually anything they would have done in consequence could have been justified. And they chose not to turn into the predators of others. And that was a choice, and often one that caused them to reevaluate themselves right down to the bottom of their soul. And so that casual association of relative poverty, even with criminality, we know this too. You take a neighborhood where there's relative poverty, the young men get violent. But they don't get violent because they're all hurt and they're victims. They get violent because they use violence to seek social status. And so even in that situation, it's not, oh, the poor. It's no wonder they're criminal because they need bread. It's like, sorry, buddy, that's not how it works. The hungry women feeding their children don't become criminals. The extraordinarily ambitious young men who feel it's unfair that their pathway to success become violent. And that's 100% well documented, and generally by radically left-leaning scholars.
Sure, so, I don't disagree with any of that. Wealth inequality in areas is a much better predictor of crime than poverty, than absolute
right,
poverty.
But it's a very specific form of crime. It's status-seeking crime by young men, right? Well, but that shows you what the underlying motive is. It's not even redress of the economic inequality. It's actually the men striving to become sexually attractive by gaining position in the dominance hierarchy.
Well, I think you have to be really careful with that assessment, though, because you can say that it's not economically. It's not seeking economic.
Why do you have to be careful? The biggest predictor of male.
Well, because we're assuming that people that commit crime in these types of circumstances are status seeking and not trying to seek economic remedy. But
That's
it might
exactly what we're assuming.
But it might be the case, for instance, that in economically prosperous areas, that the men there aren't actually seeking economic prosperity. They're also just trying to elevate status, but they do it through economic prosperity. It's potential, right?
They do it with a longer term vision in mind. Sure, they're trying to elevate. I wouldn't disagree with that in the least.
Sure.
But they do it with a much longer time horizon in mind. And we know this partly because there have been detailed studies of gang members, for example, in Chicago, who are trying to ratchet themselves up the economic ladder, but they do it with a short-term orientation. Most of them think they're going to be dead by their early 20s.
Sure.
So they're trying to maximize short-term gain. So it has nothing to do with the redress of economic inequality, except in the most fundamental sense. And it is status-driven because they're looking for comparative status.
Sure, I understand what you're saying. I don't think any human being has baked in a desire to seek economic prosperity. I think that that's like a third-order thing that we look for. And fundamentally, it's probably more like safety, security for ourselves, and then status-seeking for other things.
I think that changes when you have children.
No, well, I mean, the safety and security would extend to your
status
children.
is irrelevant, or starts to become irrelevant at that point.
I mean, depending on how you view your status, right?
You can't do that every time we have a discussion.
Sure. Well, I'm just saying, for instance, one of the important things for my child is to be able to send my child to a good school. I need to have an elevated status, right? I need to be able to buy a house in the right school district, or I need to be able to pay the education for him to go.
Right, but you're not telling me, I hope, that the driving factor behind your desire to care for your children is an elevation in your status.
No, but I'm saying that the elevation of status might be what allows you to take care of children. So, for instance, one of the biggest predictors of getting married is already
status
achieving
or position.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying there's a.
I know
all of these things kind of play into. Yeah.